So what's my model life for you?
My model life for me, how I think that is that I think that as you're growing up, you're led to a feeling of a life that you're supposed to lead. For me, that would have been like when I was growing up in the UK, to get a good job, find somebody, settle down, start a family, and do the role that a man should do in a relationship, to provide and go to work and be successful, I think.
How did that work out for you?
How did it work out for me? How many times? To start again. Yeah, not good, because you're not living to the freedom that I feel and I realise now in my life. I think that you put so much pressure on yourself based on what you believe society wants, so it makes you unhappy, because you're not really living the life that you were kind of designed to do, to the feeling that you have. For example, so what I mean is that I always had this kind of dream to go and work and live in other countries, but because
Since childhood?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, it was probably born from at an early age. When I was like, I think 9, I went to France actually to play football with my football club. And it just, it felt good, because it kind of inspired me to see how different cultures lived. Like, I know France and England, it's still Europe, but at that time I felt that things were so very different. In the way, the language, the food people liked. I'm 9 years old, so it's all an experience. But it made me right then to want to travel, to want to go places from that age, I think. And I did go to a few places throughout my childhood, Spain and whatever else, but I always had that kind of desire to actually want to go and live and work somewhere else. Right? Especially after, when I was, I think it was about 17, and I actually started full-time proper work for a studio. And it was in that job that, again, I went to Holland and did some shoots and travelled and did a few shoots with them. And I just thought, this is me. This is what I want to do. Live in these places. But I was in a relationship, and it wasn't what my partner wanted for her
17?
life. No, a little bit further forward. By the time I was like 4 or 5 years into, so probably about 21, I think. It wasn't what my partner was into. She wanted to...
Photography? Or traveling?
Living abroad.
Living abroad. Okay.
Yeah, so she'd grown up in another country, Czech Republic, and come to the UK. Mm-hmm. So I suppose for her, she had experienced that change of location, but I think I'm going to speak as a creative. And I think as a creative, if you stay in one place, whether it's in a location or an industry or just a company you're working for, you get very stale. Like your creative ability after 3 years becomes stale. There's nothing inspiring to you. So for me, it was always, I need to experience different cultures to give me that inspiration. And this is why I felt alive. Every time I would go somewhere to another country, I would feel alive, and I would do a shoot that would be great. and it would inspire me to keep going. So I was suppressing that ability, that creative freedom, by doing the work. I was happy with my job. I was still a photographer. It was absolutely fine. I've always been in the industry, but I think my surroundings were probably not where I was happy. So, ultimately, I'm feeling that pressure from family, my parents, my grandparents. They've always done that. It's what is social, that normal thing of being successful, having a family, having children, staying together forever, that kind of attitude. And I guess when you're growing up, you see that that's the model life that you've got to live. For me, how I feel. What about
For
you?
everybody else, I think what you see is what you learn to be an example of how it's supposed to be. It's as a child, right? You don't know, life can be this and can be that and blah, blah, blah. So as a child, you come in and you're like, okay, so what's the deal here? All right, so we walk like this, we talk like this, we relate like this. And this is the model of a woman, this is the model of a man, this is the model of a relationship, and we learn everything from our environment. And so that shapes the model of how we first learn things should be, life should be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that when you say my model life, you went from that angle, and I thought, when I think about the model life, it's actually the one that I specifically want to live. Now having deconditioned from the model life that I've been taught or I've learned, let's say, my model life is the one that feels authentic to me. But I can relate, and I think every single human being on the face of the earth will relate with what you're saying, because that's just how it happens for everybody.
So, like, for example, when I was married, I had a lot of kind of conflicts built out of my partner's desire to almost compete with our peers around us. So her ideal of a model life was very much the one that I was trying to fit into, I think. So we had wealthy friends that were, they had a successful or lucky or whatever, the positions that they had in life were financially good, financially stable. And you've got to think that me at the time was freelance photographer by this time. So the income is some years great, as a photographer, and some years it's really, really low, and it's you can never really know whether it's going to be good or bad. So there's a lot of kind of budgeting on your daily life and things like that. So, but our friends who had that kind of very, very secure high income were always doing the great things, that they wanted to do that made them happy, the travel, the building the house, and all the things that they had, new cars all the time, and this kind of stuff. And obviously for my partner, she felt that that's the life she wanted to have. So it puts a lot of pressure on the relationship, because there's a lack of understanding as to, well, why don't we have that? They have it. If you look on social media, somebody else has it. Why can't I have it? What's the stopping force? And there's no reason why you can't. There is nothing that stops you personally from doing it. But when you put that dependence on your partner, you're adding to the issues, I think. It makes it even more challenging from my point of view, because, and rightly or wrongly, I was always still trying to fit into that. So, I would myself be thinking that it would start to make me feel like, well, I'm not doing well enough and not good enough to fit into this, this social standing. So yeah, it builds and builds and builds until ultimately you end up very depressed. And I think I know this from, there's some various people in my life that have taken it the step too far in their depression. One particular young lady that I knew well, she felt, I don't know, I think her background wasn't so secure. Her family were separated. She kind of, ever since she was 16, was living for herself. I think she even left home when she was 17. And she always had this doubt in herself that mainly her creative ability was not good enough. And she wasn't right for anything. And it was one particular occasion where she'd always wanted to do this particular style of film making. And she had an opportunity. And she did it. And then she had the opportunity, she did the opportunity, she did it really, really well. But it didn't lead anywhere. It just wasn't the time. It just didn't work. It was nothing wrong with whatever she did. But she put that blame on herself completely. It wasn't good enough. She quit. She literally quit. She gave up. And she found a new path, something else that was making her happy for a short time. But very sadly, it didn't last. And she was 24 when she took her life.
That's the thing. And we don't examine that enough. Most of us, well, I feel like gladly now we live in a day and age where more people get into the work of personal healing and actually questioning what's going on with them, questioning their life choices and questioning everything, which is a good thing, because if we go back and look at our parents and grandparents, it's what you're saying, they just followed. They followed and they put up with all of it. Mm. And in our generation, this next generation, people seem to be more open to looking within and changing their life for the better. And it's very sad, of course. It makes me think of when I feel like she felt your friend, she felt very, very alone with her suffering. And there wasn't anybody there from the beginning of her life, actually, to help her create a healthy relationship with herself, right? It all starts with our parents. And for whatever reasons, usually it's perfectly valid reasons, but when it comes to a child, it's still traumatic for a child that a parent cannot meet their needs fully And that translates or interprets purely instinctually, on an instinctual level, into these negative beliefs about ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy of love, and all these things. And when you talk about her, I can resonate, I can recognize in my own personal journey of trying to find my creative spark and what I want to do in the world and stuff like that. And when this thing doesn't work out or that thing doesn't work out, giving up too soon, because you just can't stand the pain of rejection, because that feels like rejection or like failure, rejection. Whatever I do is rejected. People don't like it. People don't take it. People don't love it, right? And that's painful. And yes, because there is that subconscious belief from the very early age that I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, that touches right into it. It's like, imagine living with an open wound your entire life. And so that everything that comes in and touches it, how painful does it feel? Well, if you maybe have like a burnt skin from sun, you go to the pool and you burn, and I touch your skin, you'd be like, please don't. Yeah, but it wouldn't be unbearable. But now imagine there is no skin. Imagine there's like an open flesh right there with all the nerves endings out. If I touch even slightly so, how excruciatingly painful that would be. So it's the same with psychological pain. If the belief and the experience that's been feeding into belief, that belief has built up without giving it any way to let it out, to soothe it, to heal it, it becomes more and more like this open wound and more painful every time. So every time she had an experience of failure or rejection, the wound, and without getting into practicing self-love, right? Without practicing self-love. So it's like putting that ointment or whatever, like antibiotic to heal the wound. It's just you let it, how do you say this, when it goes...
Septic.
Yeah, it's like you let it rot.
Yeah.
And you do nothing with it, and every new experience just opens it more, and then it's gone.
Yeah, and I also think, obviously, in my experience, where so I've got myself out of that situation, and I did that when I was around 30, I think. But instead of at that stage going, hey, I'm free from all this, I should go and do the things that I want to do with my life, I'm still having that burning desire to please the people around me and do the things that I'm supposed to do. Like I don't get myself out of it at that time. I immediately start to think that I need to reset and begin again and be successful. And at that time I was hugely in debt, absolutely hugely in debt. So I'm proud that I didn't give up myself. I worked to get rid of that debt. But as a guy, I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I need to get back up there again, stand up again on my 2 feet and be successful again, so that my potential future partner, whoever that will be, will actually look at me to be a future partner. So my reasoning behind working and and becoming successful again was not for myself, really. In a way, it's kind of because I want to be with a partner, but I'm looking at it like, I have to do this, otherwise I won't get a partner, which isn't obviously true. So that's what I did. I set about building myself back up again to be the attractive man that kind of social media tells you should be. And not listening to what my gut wants me to do, my heart wants me to do, which is just go and, again, change the scenery, go somewhere else, do it again, do what you want to do. So I slipped back into that trap and that mesh again of just repeating the same mistakes I did when I was younger, I think. I don't find it a problem because obviously at the time it didn't make me happy and it's not making me happy, it was never going to make me, but the second time round did teach me a lot. For me, I understood a lot more. And when it all comes crashing down again, in a slightly different way, things don't crash down the same way, but you're still, I did get into a big depression. But I guess after the second time and the stuff that I learned, it enabled me to then start doing the life that I want to do and want to be for myself, for no one else. And that's kind of where...
Better late than never.
Where I am at the moment. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We'll see.
But I think it's the same for probably most people. It's the same for me.
Yeah.
I've been living my life for again due to conditioning for other people. And it's all the roots go back to childhood and how you were raised and what messages were subconsciously communicated to you. Consciously, it may sound something like, I can come up with an example, like, don't do this, do that. But then subconsciously what you are learning, the message that you're learning when you're constantly controlled and not allowed to make your own choices is that you can't trust yourself. You can't trust your own choices. I can relate to that. When I was 30 and I was entering my metamorphosis era, I left my sort of old life behind. I was in a relationship for 10 years. Well, actually, I was in a relationship ever since I was 17, just from one to another. But that particular one was like 10 years. And I realized, oh my God, I feel like a baby. I don't know how to. I didn't feel like I could trust myself to make decision, and that created this helplessness in me. The other day I think you said something like, you just said something like, how come some people some people make it from down below to up high, and so it kind of shows and proves that if they could make it, then anyone can, right? And here's where I'm not so sure, because I remember the time when I felt I was in the other relationship, and I felt constantly sort of poked in the back when whenever I go into something new, I'd always my first reflex was to ask, how do I do this? Instead of doing my own research or whatever. But that was just that's all I knew. When you were controlled as a child and you learned not to trust your own, you basically were trained like a puppy to follow. So you don't make your own decisions and you can't trust your own decisions. And so it's not even in your mind to do that. You automatically, you've been trained to go and ask, so what do I do? Right? And then imagine a person like that who just doesn't have it in their mind even that it's a possibility that they could possibly, if they did this and this, go up there. And there is nobody around to let them know, it's actually possible. If you but this is what you could do. You could use this tool, you could go, whatever. Teach them a new way of thinking. But if there's nobody around to teach you a new way of thinking, it's not even going to be here anywhere to even want to do anything, because you wouldn't know. I don't even know how to express it, so it's like so really clear that it's like asking a person who doesn't have plums to give me plums, They don't
even know
what's plums,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. So I'm not so sure. I definitely had to learn to trust my own decisions and learn how to what I can do when I don't have anybody available to ask how to do stuff. And it wasn't even the other people you see, I saw, they're just like, how do you do this? They're, Google, blah, 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 bam, found solution. For me, it wasn't even that, because my default was, how do I do this? Teach me, tell me. My default was to follow. It took many years of painful deconditioning to be able to come to a place where I felt that I could trust myself. But that also implies that I felt extremely insecure in myself in many ways. That I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't do something that could potentially be successful. And I didn't see any example of that in my family. So you see how, I don't even know what the plum is.
Yeah.